For centuries, the royal court of Kozhikode hosted an annual intellectual summit at the Tali Temple. The king awarded 109 purses of gold to the supreme masters of philosophy and logic, turning the temple into the region's most prestigious academic battleground. But the local scholars had fallen into a slump, enduring a prolonged drought of victories, losing both the gold and their reputation to outsiders in a series of humiliating defeats. This vacuum was filled by Uddanda Sastrikal, a brilliant but arrogant scholar from the East. He famously compared himself to a lion entering a forest, claiming the local elephant scholars would flee at the mere sound of his voice. Uddanda's unbroken winning streak systematically stripped the local community of its pride. His presence was a constant reminder that their intellectual tradition was failing to produce anyone capable of standing against him. Driven by desperation, the local Brahmins gathered at the Guru Vayur temple. They performed collective prayers and rituals specifically designed to manifest a savior, a champion who could reclaim their lost honor. The result was Kakkasseri Bhattathiri. From his earliest years, it was clear that the community had received exactly what they asked for, an intellect that functioned with terrifying precision. At age 3, during his father's funeral rites, he demonstrated a cognitive anomaly that baffled the adults. He could identify specific, unmarked crows returning for food day after day, tracking individual birds through a sea of identical shapes. By age 5, he was composing complex poetry with layered meanings. When asked what the goddess had said to him, he joked that she remained silent because the local yogis were too busy holding their noses in prayer to hear her. Kakkasseri wasn't raised to be a typical scholar. He was a human supercomputer, engineered by the community for the sole purpose of intellectual warfare. The highly anticipated showdown arrived when Kakkasseri stepped forward to face the undefeated Uddanda. Barely a teenager, he hadn't completed formal schooling. Uddanda began with a psychological power play. He placed his famously intelligent pet parrot on the table, a living symbol of his own wisdom, intended to intimidate the young boy. But Kakkasseri countered without saying a single word. He placed a live cat on the table, and the parrot, suddenly fearing for its life, fell into a panicked silence. Uddanda then tried a verbal jab, using a Sanskrit grammar pun to mock the boy's short physical stature, remarking that his akaram, or form, was hrasvam, small. But Kakkasseri reversed the grammatical logic instantly. He pointed out that grammatically, the letter a is actually long, while only the short a is hrasvam, effectively using Uddanda's own expertise to shut him down. Kakkasseri's opening moves showed that he understood the debate's momentum. By neutralizing Uddanda's props and insults, he ensured the champion was on the defensive before the actual philosophy even began. Seeing the stalemate, the king ordered a final test, a deep interpretation of the first verse of the Raghuvamsa. Uddanda delivered 4 distinct interpretations of that single verse. It was a masterclass that seemed impossible to beat. But Kakkasseri responded by doubling the output. He provided 8 perfect interpretations, demonstrating a processing speed that left the assembly stunned. Uddanda immediately surrendered. Kakkasseri had won, and he moved to collect the 108 purses of gold. When Uddanda tried to claim the final 109th purse, reserved for the oldest scholar, Kakkasseri blocked him again. He argued the gold belonged to his 85-year-old servant, outmaneuvering the master on his last possible technicality. By seizing the gold for a servant and humiliating the reigning master, Kakkasseri used his victory to subvert traditional expectations of seniority and prestige in the royal court. As Kakkasseri entered adulthood, his mind began to function less like a debater's and more like a high-fidelity recording device. This was proven at a traveler's inn, where a massive argument broke out among strangers speaking Kannada, Telugu, Marathi, and Tamil. When the authorities arrived to investigate the brawl, Kakkasseri stood as the only objective witness. He repeated the entire chaotic, multilingual argument to the officials. Kakkasseri didn't actually speak those languages. As this waveform shows, he simply recorded the raw phonetic data and played it back with perfect accuracy, bypassing the need for comprehension. He was recording reality as objective datasets, largely ignoring the emotional or contextual meaning of the words he heard. This absolute logic eventually led Kakkasseri to the philosophy of non-duality. He concluded that if all matter is the same, then social hierarchies and caste rules are logically non-existent. He began eating with anyone and ignoring the rigid rules of purity that governed his society. This made him a pariah among the very people who had once prayed for his birth. The community's admiration turned to fear. They gathered for a 41-day ritual, praying for his downfall and excommunication. On the final day of the ritual, Kakkasseri arrived. He drank their water, turned the cup upside down to signify his final departure. He vanished. He was never seen again. The community wanted a weapon to defend their status, but they created an intellect that could no longer function within their rules. In the end, Kakkasseri simply became too large for the environment that had prayed for his existence.